Parliament was a funk band most prominent during the 1970s. Both Parliament and its sister act, Funkadelic, were led by George Clinton. History: Parliament was originally the Parliaments, a doo-wop vocal group based at a Plainfield, New Jersey barber shop. The group was formed in the late 1950s and included George Clinton, Ray Davis, Fuzzy Haskins, Calvin Simon, and Grady Thomas. Clinton was the group leader and manager. The group finally had a hit single in 1967 with "I Wanna" Testify on Revelat Records. To capitalize, Clinton formed a backing band for a tour, featuring teenage barbershop employee Billy Bass Nelson on bass and his friend Eddie Hazel on guitar, with the lineup eventually rounded out by Tall Ross on guitar, Tke Forward on drums, and Mickey Atkins on organ. During a contractual dispute with Revelat, Clinton temporarily lost the rights to the name The Parliaments, and signed the ensemble to Westbound Records as Funkadelic, which Clinton positioned as a funk rock band featuring the 5 touring musicians with the 5 Parliament singers as uncredited guests. With Funkadelic as a recording and touring entity in its own right, in 1970 Clinton relaunched the singing group, now known as Parliament, at first featuring the same 10 members. Clinton was now the leader of 2 different acts, Parliament and Funkadelic, which featured the same members but were marketed as creating 2 different types of funk. The Parliament album entitled Osmium was released on Invictus Records in 1970, and was later reissued on CD with non-album tracks as both Rhenium and First Thangs. Osmium featured a mostly psychedelic soul sound that was more similar to the Funkadelic albums of the period than to the later Parliament albums. The song The Breakdown was released separately as a single, and reached number 30 on the R&B charts in 1971. Due to continuing contractual problems and the fact that Funkadelic releases were more successful at the time, Clinton abandoned the name Parliament until 1974. Following Osmium, the lineup of Parliament Funkadelic began going through many changes and was expanded significantly, with the addition of important members such as keyboardist Bernie Worrell in 1970, singer-guitarist Gary Scheider in 1971, and bassist Bootsy Collins in 1972. Dozens of singers and musicians would contribute to future Parliament Funkadelic releases. Clinton relaunched Parliament in 1974 and signed the act to Casablanca Records. Parliament, now augmented by the Horny Horns, was positioned as a smoother R&B-based funk ensemble with intricate horn and vocal arrangements, and as a counterpoint to the guitar-based funk rock of Funkadelic. By this point, Parliament and Funkadelic were touring as a combined entity known as Parliament Funkadelic or simply P-Funk. The album Up for the Downstroke was released in 1974, with Chocolate City following in 1975. Both performed strongly on the Billboard R&B charts and were moderately successful on the pop charts. Parliament began its period of greatest mainstream success with the concept album Mothership Connection, the lyrics of which launched much of the P-Funk mythology. The subsequent albums The Clones of Dr. Funkenstein, Funkadelic vs. The Placebo Syndrome, and Motor Booty Affair all reached high on both the R&B and pop charts, while Funkadelic was also experiencing significant mainstream success. Parliament scored the number 1 R&B singles Flashlight in 1977 and Aqua Boogie in 1978. The rapidly expanding ensemble of musicians and singers in the Parliament Funkadelic enterprise, as well as Clinton's problematic management practices, began to take their toll by the late 1970s. Original Parliament's members Fuzzy Haskins, Calvin Simon, and Grady Thomas, who had been with Clinton since the barbershop days in the late 1950s, felt marginalized by the continuous influx of new members and departed acrimoniously in 1977. Other important group members like singer-guitarist Glenn Goins and drummer Jerome Braley left Parliament Funkadelic in the late 1970s after disputes over Clinton's management. 2 further Parliament albums, Glory Hella Stupid and Trombipulation, were less successful than the albums from the group's prime 1975 to 1978 period. In the early 1980s, with legal difficulties arising from the multiple names used by multiple groups, as well as a shake-up at Casablanca Records, George Clinton dissolved Parliament and Funkadelic as recording and touring entities. However, Many of the musicians in later versions of the two groups remained employed by Clinton. Clinton continued to release new albums regularly, sometimes under his own name and sometimes under the name George Clinton and the P-Funk All-Stars. The P-Funk All-Stars continued to record and tour into the 1990s and 2000s, and regularly perform classic Parliament songs. Discography. References: Liner notes to Music for Your Mother by Rob Bowman, 1992. External links: The Mothership. History of Parliament Funkadelic. Parliament discography at Discogs.